And good evening, and welcome to Camelot Castle TV Network. Now tonight we are joined by three very, very special guests. And of course, my son Caspian is with us. Well done, darling. And we're also joined by Jonathan Marshall. Welcome, Jonathan.
Great to see you.
Great to see you. Of course, we have interviewed Jonathan remotely previously, but tonight Jonathan is here in person. And of course, he is joined by Duchess, who is
Bang on cue.
the most spectacular the most spectacular peregrine falcon. And what can I say? We'd better just move that newspaper there, because it looks as if Duchess... Oh, careful, because it's going to go on the carpet there.
There you go.
You just pull it back, yes.
There you go. Position that just in the right place.
What do they say? You shouldn't work with children or animals. So we're having a go. And of course, what has Duchess just done, darling? Duchess did a big poo on the newspaper. But there we go. There's always a first. You know, one time at Camelot we had a dog ball here, and in this room here we had two horses, and one of them took a huge dump in the middle. It was the ballroom. So Duchess is not first young lady to relieve herself in the Infinity Salon. But there we go. Jonathan, it's lovely to see you. Now, of course, you're known across the country for your horseman shows, and you know you're doing these very special days here now at Camelot Castle where people can fly the falcons with you.
Yeah. And
you had a couple of guests down here the other day. What would you like to tell us about why are you back in the country?
Well, I came back to the UK because I had some work commitments over here, shows. As everybody knows, all of the shows were cancelled for last year. Many of them were cancelled for this year. But I had some commitments which I wanted to fulfil because I don't like letting people down. So I came back from my home in Spain and did the shows throughout August and September. And I was actually due to go back to Spain. Are you going to settle, or are you going to have a little flat? I was due to go back to Spain about 3 weeks ago. Duchess's sister, who's called Morwenna, decided when we were out flying on the cliffs that she was going to catch a crow. And she chased the crow right along the cliff. The crow went over the other side of a fence, and the bird went straight into the fence and broke her leg. So she had to have a pin put in her leg. So the very, very good vet down in Bude helped sort her out. But of course, we're not allowed to travel for 6 weeks because she can't get a vet certificate to travel. So that meant we had an extended visit here to Cornwall, which I have to say has been lovely. They say things happen for a reason, and actually there's been many reasons why this has turned out to be really, really good. I've met some lovely people, made friends with people in Boscastle. I've been taking people out every day flying the falcons. The weather's been fantastic, hasn't it, recently?
Yeah, it's been lovely. I mean, it's perfect for flying falcons, really.
Yeah.
We've had a sort of an Indian summer, really, in October here, haven't we?
We have, yeah. It's been absolutely great.
It's amazing.
So, hang on, she'll settle down in a minute.
Settle down, there we go.
So, it's actually been great. I'm due to go back to Spain, to my home. I live in the north of Spain, a place called Asturias, which is, if you could imagine the Lake District with the Cornish coast, that's what Asturias is like. It's beautiful. So I shall be going back in about another 3 weeks when Morwenna's leg's better, and I'm taking 4 of my falcons back with me. I've got a big show to do in Portugal in November.
Good.
And I shall be coming back in the spring, back to beautiful Cornwall and doing all the shows again.
Fantastic.
Now, I'll tell you what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And I wanted to mention this. I'm going to pop this hood on.
Yeah.
Like that. And this will just keep Duchess settled. People often say, does the hood upset them or harm them in any way? And actually, no, it's just the opposite. The hood is a way of making Duchess think that it's night time because it all goes dark. Now, you've heard the expression to hoodwink. Hoodwink somebody.
Yes.
This is where it comes from. And actually, I wanted to bring this point up, and I know you just said to me, Jonathan, try not to be too controversial, but am I allowed to explain why this is relevant?
Yes, you are.
Okay. So, everybody knows that yourself and me and all the people that we really can relate to, we have a view of what's going on around the world at the moment.
There's a certain amount of hoodwinking going on.
I would say a huge amount of hoodwinking. So to put that into context for people who aren't quite with us on this, when I start to train falcons, the first thing I teach them to do is to accept a hood. We start at 12 weeks old, and you put the hood on them, and when it's dark and quiet, everything's calm. Now, I could walk through a fun fair, a rock concert, anywhere, and the bird won't mind because she can't see it, because her mind is distracted by the fact that she's in the dark. That's the key word. She's in the dark. And so, of course, she's not going to be stressed. And I could do anything, and she would be totally unaware. Now, at the moment, I feel as though the whole world, apart from those of us who aren't fooled, are absolutely in the dark. And we are allowing the people who are causing everything to go take place to do what they like. And we're all hoodwinked. We're all kidded. Just like this bird is now settled down, and she's totally unaware of the fact that there's a room, and we're here, and there's lights, and everything else. And that is exactly what's happening around the world at the moment. So many things going unreported by mainstream media. So many, unfortunately, the only word I can use is lies, or let's say untruths, because that's a kinder way of saying lie, that people are focusing on. Well, I think something very sinister is taking place behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So there's a relevance there, isn't there?
Well, you're absolutely right. Caspian is leaving us now because he's got some cartoons to watch. Bye, darling.
I don't blame him.
Actually, on the television I put in a program, so it's something different.
Something different. Okay, well, it's a program. It's not cartoons. More
Bye,
educational,
Caspian.
I think. Good. So, people have been hoodwinked, haven't they? And I think it is interesting that the techniques that are being used on mankind at the moment are really quite sinister, and they are quite alarming, really, if you look at the number of people. I don't know about you, Jonathan, but I've been very shocked by people who I would, in the normal sense of the word, consider to be quite sane, quite normal people, but they've bought the narrative literally hook, line and sinker.
Unbelievable. And this last 3 weeks actually, since my bird broke her leg, I've been going down to Boscastle and meeting. I must have spoken to several thousand people in the last 2-3 weeks. And I always start off by gauging them, and I'm sure you're in the same position, and many of the viewers will be. You know within a second of talking to somebody whether they are aware or not. I can see straight away. Some people are living in this totally false reality, and they believe every little thing that's said on the TV. My mum, I love my mum to bits, but she believes everything. If it's on television, she believes it. Doesn't matter what it is. If it's on telly, she believes it. Now, and so what I do is I start a conversation with people, and I ask them a few questions, and I know straight away whether they are free thinking, and I think that is the point. And it's incredible to see this divide between those of us who can join dots and are free-thinking people, and those of us who are the very reverse, who just regurgitate. And they even use the same phrases that you hear on television, the very, very words that are being indoctrinated, and people are just repeating it like parrots. It's unbelievable.
Well, they are repeaters. They've become repeaters for the mantra, haven't they? They've become. They've been brainwashed, basically, and then they just repeat what it is that they've been told. Absolutely.
And you can't blame people, really, because this has been and still is, a very clever psychological operation. Now, John, you just said I train falcons and I train horses. Probably with the falcon, you were talking about some creature which has been around for millions of years, the wildest of all creatures. So how does a person like myself get inside a falcon's head? And the way we do it is by thinking like a falcon and by understanding how they feel and how they think. It's all about perception. And this is something that's really a good trainer, whether it be a falcon or a horse or a bad one, it's whether you don't think like a person. I have to think like a falcon or a horse, depending on what I'm training. And if I can do that, I can anticipate what they're going to do, and so therefore I can manipulate their thought process for them to do what I want them to do. That is exactly what's taking place right now all around the world. And I think that the people who have orchestrated this are incredibly clever. I don't admire them at all. I think it's sinister. But you have to look at it and think, well, they are extremely bright. Am I allowed to... you to tell me a few words not to say. The way now people who have had...
certain medical protocols.
Yeah. Are not reported as have had it after 2 weeks. Then they are recorded as having had something, but up until that point they're not. And so therefore, if anything was to happen to them, they would go down as being, what's the word I could use? You know what I'm trying to say.
Somebody that hasn't had a particular topical medical procedure.
Correct. And so, therefore, if there was a fatality, they'd go down as So it's a very
now for those of you out there watching. One of the things that we have here at Camelot Castle is a very, very fantastic, uncensored Telegram channel, and it's called Camelot Castle TV Network Hub, and you can find it on Telegram. And we have to be a little bit cryptic here in these videos, because the level of censorship on planet Earth right now is so vicious that if we use certain key words, if we bring up certain subjects, we simply will be censored, and then you won't have a chance to hear what Jonathan's got to say. So it's a bit of a tricky thing right now to be a freedom fighter. You've got to be a little bit smarter in terms of where you place your communication. But you were telling me about people you were speaking to locally here. What have you found the local response? Have you found that you've been able to wake a few people up quickly?
Well, I'll tell you what I have found. I have found a lot more people who are like-minded with us than I expected. I thought that there was a very low percentage. In actual fact, it's far more than the mainstream media would have you believe.
What percentage would you put it at locally?
Locally, I think we're still in the minority. I'd say probably somewhere to 30 to 40%.
That's very high.
Are aware, and 60 to 70% are completely unaware. And do you know what? I think that it's changing quite quickly, because I think that a lot of the people who are unaware secretly are aware, but they're just frightened to admit it. Because what we are experiencing is actually very, very scary. And none of us want to believe it. And that's because we're not evil. I am a loving person, I believe in, and you can call it, there's various names. I call it nature, or you can call it consciousness, you can call it God. The best word is love. That's what I believe in, love. And of course, when you are that kind of person, you cannot comprehend that somebody could be so evil. Now,
if somebody wants to look into you a bit more deeply and say, okay, who is this guy telling me what he thinks? How can people find out about you? They can see you have you got a website?
I do. Jonathan Marshall Shows. And
JonathanMarshallShows.com.
Yeah, .com.
So that's JonathanMarshallShows.com.
Yeah.
And perhaps somebody could put it in the comments when this goes live.
Yeah.
Basically, Jonathan is somebody with friends and allies all over England, and really, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're not profiting in any way from putting out your opinion.
Far from it. If anything, it's probably damaged my business, because when you're not outspoken, that's the wrong word, when you're prepared to stand up and say what you believe to be the truth, you instantly become a target, as I'm sure you've experienced. And many, many of my friends who cannot be quiet and cannot... It would be easy for the likes of John and I and other well-known people to just toe the line and be quiet. However, I have something called a conscience. I've also got two beautiful things called sons, two boys. And it breaks my heart to think that those boys are being targeted by, I believe, a very evil force. And I would do anything. I would give my last breath to protect them, as I'm sure you would for Caspian.
Of course.
And all of your listeners and viewers will feel the same, because there are children. I'm 53 years old. If I snuff it tomorrow, I've had 53 fantastic years. I'm thinking of the generations to come. And this, for me, this all started to happen, if you like. I became awakened, whatever the expression is. I started to realise about 6 years ago.
I think awakened is a good word, or enlightened.
Yeah, I
awakened,
agree.
Enlightened, clear on the subject of of what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
There's many different words for it.
Mm-hmm.
But Jesus, of course, said, he that has eyes, let him see.
Mm-hmm.
Many different people talk about people having the sight.
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
Well, for me, my grandma always used to say when I was a little kid, she was a lovely, lovely person, my grandma. Very, very wise. She lived to be 95, and she always used to go, "Oh, Jonathan, you." And she used to say, "You're special, I used to think, what's she going on about? Now, because I'm a showman, and I've spent all of my professional life since 1986 doing shows and performing, of course, a showman, it's in your DNA to try and get an audience to enjoy what you're providing, which is a show, entertainment. But I gradually, over a period of years, I went from doing shows and thinking, well, a show's a lovely thing, but really I want to be able to try and give more than just a show. I want to have a message. And when my grandma passed away about 5-6 years ago, I don't know what it was, but something happened, and I started to find myself during my performances talking about life, talking about time, how important time is, and how important it is to share love with the people that you love, be it your mum, your dad, your brothers, your partner, everybody. Because love is the most important thing that we have, and time is the most precious commodity. It would be a wonderful thing to be fabulously wealthy. I'm the happiest poor man you'll ever meet. I'm not a wealthy person by any means, but I am a wealthy person in terms of love, because I'm overflowing with love for my falcons, my horses, my family, my children, my friends. And I feel as though I won the lottery, but the lottery of life, when I realised what's important. And I wanted to get this message across in my shows. So I don't even call when I do falconry shows or horse shows, my show is called Free Spirits. And the reason I call it that is because when you understand that we are all as spiritual beings and we are all connected to love, that's where we came from, it's where
so you are aware that you are an immortal being.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I just happen to be.
So when your body dies, you don't consider that you will die.
Not at all. No, I feel as though we've always been here in some form or other. Yeah. Right now, I just happen to be in this body, which is my vehicle. But I believe wholeheartedly, and I believe stronger and stronger as time passes, that actually we are one aspect of a consciousness which is eternal, and we're all part of the same consciousness. You are, Duchess is, the birds are, the horses. Every living thing is one aspect of the same consciousness. And when you really think about it deeply, it's undeniable. Because if I died tonight...
The body.
Yeah. Consciousness, awareness, reality, things growing, the sea, the wind, the sun, that'll carry on. Just because my body dies doesn't mean to say that consciousness dies, because the consciousness will carry on in other people. And I came from that very same consciousness. We know...
Now, do you differentiate your consciousness from overall consciousness?
No, not really. I think that my consciousness is one aspect of a bit like if you were to go out to that wonderful ocean out there and scoop a glass of water, you've got one part of a big ocean, but it's the same ocean. And I believe that's why people like yourself, me, and others who feel the same, we gravitate towards each other, because we're actually the same thing. We're all part of the same thing. We're different aspects of the same thing, and it's great to be able to communicate with other people who are like that, because it just focuses our view on what's taking place from all different angles. There's a wonderful bird called a barn owl, and they have asymmetrical hearing, and that means that when they hear a sound, they hear it from two different aspects, and so they get a very, very precise, accurate pinpoint on where the noise came from. So if you imagine, let's say there's millions of us who are awake, and we can all communicate, we are focusing very, very clearly on the same thing from so many different aspects. And that's why I know that what I'm saying is true, because I have spoken to people I've never met before, and they're saying exactly what I'm saying, as are you. And I was so relieved, because John and I have known each other for quite a few years, not well, but we've known of each other. But when I saw 12 months ago or more that you were doing this, and I heard you speak, I thought, great, there's another guy I can relate to. And there's many people I've spoken to who are on the same frequency as us, and I'm shocked by the people who aren't, who I thought would be, and they're just not. But I'm also encouraged by the people who are, who I wouldn't think would be, but they are.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are a very interesting set of beliefs and observations. I have, I mean, clearly, obviously, when the individual spirit is in a body, then, you know, it has an identity. For instance, Duchess has an identity right now. You have an identity, I have an identity. And that's very obvious when the spirit is occupying a body. I have also observed that after the spirit, if you like, leaves the body and the body dies, whether that be Duchess or you or myself or anyone, that spirit also retains its unique identity and is detectable as such. Now, not everybody is of that opinion. I have made that observation, and I have rather like, well, you're a musician as well, but rather like you recognize a melody that you've heard, and you would recognize that melody whether you heard it in the Royal Opera House or whether you heard it on a cliff top. You know, certain spirits, well, all spirits have their own unique melody, and that melody I have observed is identifiable. And so very often you will identify a spirit that, let's say, you've known in one physical identity, and then you can identify the same spirit in a later but different identity.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that there aren't agreements that we all as spirits hold in common. Like, for instance, the understanding that or understandings that we're in agreement with, like, for instance, the understanding that the spirit itself is immortal and consciousness continues. But I have observed that there is an identical, differentiable consciousness, and it's a very interesting thing, because, of course, a lot of people out there, and it's we didn't even think we were going to talk about this. It's a little esoteric,
but it's good.
I'm
good. Enjoying this.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that has fascinated me is how people who are supposedly spiritual, and you have people that wear their religion on their sleeve, but these people have been the most terrified of death.
Yeah.
And you see these people wandering around, hiding in their homes. And the question I ask is, do they actually believe their own scriptures?
Well, you know that's a spiritual version of a rhino.
Oh, yeah.
A Republican in name only.
Well, you're absolutely right.
Because
what would it be? Crino? Christian?
Yeah.
No, Christian in name only.
Yeah.
Or
We'll
Buddhist in name only, yeah. Albino.
Yeah.
Buddhist in name only,
Yeah.
So it's absolutely.
Because in my observation, for what it's worth, being a spiritual person and being close and understanding God, if you want to call it God, see, the problem is, because the other side has made the word God so unfashionable that people turn their nose up. Not everybody, but a lot of people go, oh, God, we're not going to discuss this God.
More so in this country. In America, it's very popular.
Yeah, absolutely.
Americans, love discussing God. They're not ashamed of God. The motto of the country, of course, is "In God We Trust."
Yeah, which I love.
So it's the foundation. It's the cornerstone, really, of their culture.
Yeah, but you know how sex, drugs, and rock and roll was cool. Anything to do with Cliff Richard, you mentioned God, suddenly he lost loads of people who
Well, I
followed
think a lot of these things were designed
Yeah,
in order to distance a person from their own spirituality.
yeah.
I mean, Woodstock, for instance, was a CIA experiment
I didn't know
in
that.
order to export LSD. Yeah, it was a military experiment to see what would happen if hallucinogenics were used on a large-scale population. And all the LSD at Woodstock was distributed by a fellow called Ginsberg, who was a CIA operative.
I didn't know that.
And they wanted, because it was initially the military obviously developed LSD to see, well, how could you? I mean, imagine if you released it in the water supply of the city.
Yeah.
So they wanted to see what would happen if you did that. And Woodstock basically, was a pilot for that.
It makes a lot of sense.
And the early hippies were really quite harmless, but of course, the CIA used the hippie movement to pilot out the use of various different drugs and so on and so forth.
Wow. I didn't know any of that.
Well, it's interesting.
It
It's
really
got
is.
interesting origins.
To go back to what you initially asked, though, and you explained how you've experienced the same spiritual
Identity.
identity.
Like when you have when you have the spirit combined with the physical form, it's very obvious that your body, this is Jonathan Marshall, this is your current identity, which is a combination of you, the spirit, calling itself Jonathan Marshall in the current incarnation, plus your mind, your memories, perhaps you have some earlier life memories, perhaps you don't, but whatever memories you've got, you brought those to Camelot this afternoon or this evening, and then your body is there. So it's very obvious that we're dealing with Jonathan Marshall. Now, the body dies, okay, and that gets burned, goes in the ground, whatever we do with bodies these days. And, okay, what's happened to that consciousness? Now, does that consciousness have an identity? And my observation is, actually, yes, it does. And it can be that identity still being part of mankind's overall consciousness, that causation point, or that person that decides, chooses, the sovereign entity, because of course, true love, one of the questions I often ask people is do you believe that God loves you? And of course, most people would say, well, yes, I believe that God loves me, and so on and so forth. I say, well, would a loving God want you to have more power than the Creator or less? What is the loving creation paradigm? You see, would he want you to have greater power of choice than he does, or lesser power of choice than he does? Would he want you to have a greater sovereign capacity or a lesser sovereign capacity? And I can ask you about your children, Jonathan, because you got 2 sons.
I do, yeah.
Do you want them to have greater power of choice than you or less?
I want them to have greater.
That's right. Do you want them to experience more love than you?
Yes, of course.
Right. And that's the loving, because you love your children.
Yeah.
So, of course, the real confusion I think that a lot of people have spiritually, religiously, is they consider the paradigm of life a pyramid with God at the top and all of us lesser beings down. And here we are as man, you've got the angel somewhere in the middle of the pyramid, and then here we are as man. But actually, the true paradigm of creation is God is at the bottom of that pyramid.
Yeah.
And each and every one of us was created with the potential and capacity to have greater, and of course, greater power than God himself. And Christ alluded to this. In Luke 14:11, he said, each and every one of you will do the same works as myself, and greater works than these will you do, for I am going to the Father. Now that's a hell of a quote.
It is.
From the Son of God.
Yeah, but the thing is, I'm going to point this out to you, John, because I think God is not an external thing. I think it's an internal thing. I think, I've said this a few times and people get shocked first, because I am happy to say I am the Son of God, but so are you, and so are you.
Well, you're absolutely right, and of course you are directly quoting St. Thomas, and his gospel is in the Apocrypha of the Bible, and he says, the kingdom of God lies within you.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I worked out, John, having sort of missed it for years, because it's actually very, very, very simple. Do you know who taught me that? And it wasn't a human. It was one of my horses, Amadeus.
Really?
My beautiful black stallion, who people will probably know. And I'll tell you how he pointed that out to me without saying a thing. Horses are very, very pure souls. Very kind, very noble. The word chivalry comes from the French word cheval, horse. And
of course it does, yes, you're right.
Yeah. They are incredible souls, horses, very healing animals. And when you work with them, like I do every day, and you listen to them, and I was with the great Monty Roberts a couple of years ago, and he told me this. He's fantastic, world famous. He's the horse whisperer. And he said, you've learned to listen to your horse, haven't you? And I said, yeah, I absolutely have. And it's not listen to it kind of eating and jumping and snorting. It's listen to it spiritually, because...
So is it telepathic?
It almost is a telepathic.
Interchange.
Yes.
I'm sure horses are telepathic.
Well, they pick up on vibration and energy from the other end of the field that we aren't even aware of, because the problem is we've developed this thing called language. The problem with language is we can lie and we can tell untruths. Horses, and falcons for that matter, cannot speak. And because they cannot speak by using words, they can only speak to us by expressions of how they feel. I can tell Duchess whether she's relaxed and calm and happy or not.
Is Duchess enjoying being on Camelot Castle TV?
I think she's settled down a bit now. To begin with, she was a little bit.
She didn't like the lights, probably, actually.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that the horse, Amadeus particularly, who's very, very quiet. If you can imagine a big oak tree, that's what he's like. He's a huge horse. And he's incredibly powerful, but very, very gentle. If I was having a bad day and I was short-tempered, which, let's face it, we're only human, John. We all have bad days. Some days I swear and I kick a bucket and, I'm in a bad mood. And the horse would say nothing at all, and he would look at me, and at the end of the day, if I'd been a bit short with him and he was in his stable, I'd get in my bed. Right on the newspaper. Good shot, Duchess. Put your hood on a minute. And when I get in my bed at night and I think, gosh, poor old Amadeus, I kind of raised my voice and he'd not done anything wrong. Without saying a word, he exposed my weaknesses as a trainer, because he was not at fault. I might have been at fault because of an exterior thing. It could have been a bill that came in, or who knows. I'm just trying to think of an incident now. But whenever, there's no such thing as a bad horse, only a bad trainer. And when you do, when you are in that kind of frame of mind and you're not perhaps as patient or as gentle as you could be, the horse exposes that without doing anything. And at that point, you look inward, because your conscience, which is the thing that pricks you when you get into bed at night and tells you were wrong, you can't lie to your own conscience. It's true. It's truthful. And that's why I say God, love, consciousness, nature, it's all the same thing to me. The wonderful Ricky Gervais, who I like, I think he's a brilliant comedian. He's famously, what's the word when you don't believe in anything?
Atheist.
Atheist. Famously atheist. I'd love to have a chat with Ricky Gervais, because...
Well, I think Ricky Gervais, listen, he's a fantastic comedian.
Yeah.
But in that aspect of life, he's an incredibly sloppy researcher.
Well, I think what it is, he's looking too deep, because I did it for years. I was looking for something, before I realised what it was all about, I was looking for something that was going to be like a eureka moment. And I was going to go, oh gosh, I've been looking all the time, like when you lose your keys, there they are. And it wasn't that at all. It's so simplistic and easy that it's almost so easy that we overlook it, because all of those things, that word, the Almighty, whether you call it God, love, consciousness, whatever, it's an internal thing, and it's truthful, and it never lies, and you know the truth because it's right inside you, because we came from love, and we'll go back to love. And that's why I know that this life that we're experiencing now is just one temporary. I'm not frightened of dying. I don't want to die, and I hope I don't have a horrible death. But I'm actually quite excited, because wherever we go next, I know it's going to be a wonderful thing.
It's going to be something new, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you're so right. And of course, the derivation of conscience is quite interesting, because of course it's made up of two words: con, which means with, and science, which actually comes from skio, knowledge, you see. So the word actually means with knowledge. And if you really think about it, your conscience is the deepest well of knowledge that you have. And of course, each and every one of us knows the instant that we have transgressed, because our deep well of knowledge tells us immediately, like, you know the minute you've transgressed, and that is that little prick or whatever it is. But the conscience is actually your well of knowledge.
Yeah.
And the word means with knowledge. So
Course,
the idea is that you're born with an innate knowledge. And it's a very, very it's a valuable thing to treasure. You know, and of course we can when we transgress too often, of course what we're doing is we're blunting our own knowledge, and then we lose ability to see which way we're going. Are we going left? Are we going right? But that's very interesting, and I'm sure you're right, Jonathan. So I have a question for you, because you've been talking. You are, without question, one of the great men of the people. You interact with people. I've seen you dealing with kings. I've seen you dealing with commoners. I've seen you dealing with, you know, people from the city, people from the countryside. You have an amazing way of interacting. And, you know, when we did our interview, it was one of the best. People responded very, very well to it. I don't know if you remember, but it was one of the most popular things. You're a very, very popular man. The length and breadth of really Europe. And now, of course, in America. They know you in America now.
Yeah.
So my point is, obviously, we're dealing with about, let's say locally here, 30% of people are awake, maybe 40%. I'm not sure it's that high across the country. Maybe we've been working a little harder down here. I don't know. But let's say it is 30 to 40%. Okay, and let's say the thing would flip if another 10, 20% of people woke up. What is the thing that everybody can agree with? You know, we can all talk about the outrageous stuff.
Yeah, of course.
You know, aliens flying in from wherever or whatever. Or, you know, I saw actually it was a Norwegian princess has a boyfriend that has just announced the fact that he's half lizard or something, or part of some sort of spiritual lizard race, which of course makes David Icke's communication seem far more relevant. And it was actually reported in one of the main, I think Business International reported it. And so this is very interesting.
Yeah.
But for your average person, you know, what do you think is the thing what is the one? I mean, obviously it is different for everybody, but is there a particular idea that you've found, something that you've found that you get people to look at something and it's worked?
Yeah.
Like, what have you found has worked to wake up your fellow man?
Okay, well, I think it's a very, very easy thing to answer that question, because what is every living thing on this planet striving for? They're striving for love, security, and to be able to look after their families and children. Now, it doesn't matter which part of the world you come from, what colour your skin is, what religion you practice, what language you speak. We all want to just live peacefully. We want love, and we want to look after our families. And that's across the board. And all the wars that have ever taken place haven't been started by the people. They've been started by the minority, which are the leaders who create these situations. But in actual fact, that's why I left the Air Force. I was in the Royal Air Force. And
I didn't know that.
yeah, and I left the Royal Air Force because I was trained in the Rock Apes, and so my job, had I gone and done it, which I didn't, because I realised I was living someone else's life. I would have been parachuted into somewhere, and I would have had to kill people. And when we were being talked to by a flying officer one day, he said that. He actually said it's...
When you say you were trained as a rock age?
Rock Ape. Well, it was a RAF regiment. They're called the Rock 8s.
Really.
And I only joined the Air Force because I wanted to fly Falcons on the runways. That's why I did it. But I did all the training and everything else. And one day, this flying officer Barlow was walking up and down. He said, "Oh, you lads have to be prepared to die for your job and to kill for your job." And I remember, I was only 19. I don't want to kill anybody. And I certainly don't want to die. I want to live to be an old man and have grandchildren and experience a lovely life. Why would I waste my life doing this when in actual fact I just want to be with my falcons and I want to have a wonderful family. That's what I wanted. And I went and said to him, "I'm going to have to leave because my heart's not in it." And I said, "You wouldn't be able to rely on me in this situation because my heart's not here. I don't agree with what we're doing, basically." So I had to buy myself out of the Air Force. So I've diverted slightly, but my point is...
Oh, well done for doing that. That's a lot of integrity it takes to do that. And I think,
I got a lot of stick because my poor dad, who's, God rest his soul, is no longer with us, he was disappointed. He felt like he was very proud of the fact that I was in the Air Force and I was doing well and I won the sports trophy and la 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 la. But I had to face him and say, "Dad, I'm sorry, it's not for me." And he was disappointed. But anyway, so going back...
It's not his life, is it, at the end of the day?
Yeah.
It's your life.
Yeah, exactly. And I know it was the right thing because, I get now in my work life, I get to share a wonderful... I did today, I was up in Gloucestershire today flying Falcons with a family on the Downs, and these kids who'd never seen a Falcon, they'll never forget that. It was an experience they'll take with them for the rest of their life, and that is my calling. I know it is. So, but going back to how I think it can get people to wake up is because... everybody, no matter which language you speak, everyone has been confused, they've heard conflicting stories, and there is no doubt about it that this whole narrative does not make sense because it's contradictory. And everyone can see that. Even my sister, who is about as programmed as they come, even she, I'm sure, would admit to herself that it's not right, it doesn't make sense. So, that means that we know there's something's happening that we're not quite sure about. And we all just want to be happy and safe, and we want to have love in our life. So the leaders who were creating these wars and this discord around the world, I've always thought, well, why don't we get them all together and say, right, there's 50 of you, all have a fight in a boxing ring. Get it out your system. Don't involve us. I don't want to fight with somebody from the Middle East or wherever. I don't want to. I want to have a peaceful life. And everybody I speak to feels the same. Nobody wants violence and fighting. We just want a peaceful life. And there's nearly 8 billion of us, and there's several thousand of them. And as David Icke said not that long ago, I think I can see a way out of this. The most powerful word that we've got now is no. That's the most powerful word that we've got. It requires no violence. It requires no discord. It just requires us all to look at what's happening and to say no. Because as long as we go along with it all, it'll happen.
And do you know Gareth Icke?
I don't. I think I might have spoke to him.
Because he's got a great TV show. I'll introduce you to him. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
And he'd be good.
Yeah, I'd love to meet him, and I'd love to meet David. His son actually, Gareth. Yeah.
Gareth is the fellow with the TV show, and he's a very, very nice man. His sister came in the other day, and this is David. Of course, David Icke has been doing his utmost to try to expose the truth. Now, I don't agree with everything he says, but you know what? There's a few things he says that I definitely agree with.
Absolutely, me too.
And if you say to me, who do you trust more to give you accurate information, Boris Johnson or David Icke?
Yeah, I know.
I'll take David Icke every time.
Well, you can always tell when Boris Johnson's lying because his lips are moving.
Well, they do say that, and his hair is unbrushed. So, listen, it has been a real pleasure having you here. I'm mindful that Duchess has been incredibly patient.
Yes.
Just tell us a little bit about Duchess. What type of bird is she, in fact?
So, she's, when I go out and people ask me, I just say it's a peregrine because it's too complicated to explain. Her father is a Scottish peregrine. Her mother is an African falcon called a Lana falcon. And the reason we cross them is because all the shows I do are usually in the summer when it's hot weather. Pure peregrines don't like the heat. They just go and sit in the shade. So if you cross them with an African falcon, they love the heat. So all of my display falcons are peregrine lanner crosses. You'd have to be a bit of a twitcher to know the difference. So I just said the peregrines. But they're actually peregrine lanner crosses. I breed them every year. Have been breeding them since 1986. This is my passion. I love falcons. And we haven't bred them for the last 2 years because of all the silly rules. But I'm hoping that next year we'll be able to breed them again. And I always keep one female back for myself. And the reason I keep the females is they're slightly bigger. And I think they're a bit easier to work with. So I've got four girls, 4 sisters who are 3, 4, 5, 6. She's the eldest, she's 6. And I've got the parents as well. And I absolutely love them, and they never let me down. We go out flying them at all the shows. And I think you've seen it, John.
I have.
When we do the shows, this falcon here can fly at 200 miles an hour, and she flies right through my horse's legs. It's all done to music. And it's really, really spectacular. And you know, it always, even though I've done it 1,000 times, it always makes me cry. I did a show, the Lancashire Game and Country Fair, about a month ago. And when I go out into the arena now, because of what we're all experiencing, I talk about love. I'm sure some people in the crowd think I'm a bit potty, but I say this falcon cannot lie. She doesn't have the ability to lie. She doesn't think about tomorrow. She doesn't think about yesterday. The same as this horse. And we could all learn a great deal from these animals because they live in the moment. They're absolutely honest, completely and utterly honest. And they're not impressed by your title, your status, your wealth. None of that means anything. All of these animals want from us is care and love. They want to trust us, and if every human being in the world was as honest and kind as my animals, we'd be living in a wonderful world. In particular,
all this bullshit would be over in a week, wouldn't it?
Oh, it would. It would. In fact, without Amadeus, this horse I've got, he's just stunning. One of the things that I kind of came up with, and I don't know whether this is true, but people seem to like it, is all the most wonderful people in the world that you've ever known, like my lovely grandma, I feel as though when they leave this life and they pass away, they come back as horses.
Well, you could well be right. You could well be right. I've heard that certainly. I have heard that some people like to spend time as a horse, and I think you could be absolutely right.
Well, if you get a choice, I would come back as a falcon because, I mean, you're so lucky here, John. I'm sure you get them going right outside your window.
We have wild ones. Yeah,
it's so spectacular to watch.
Yeah, there's a wild pair just out on the island there, but.
We were, quickly mention this because John and Caspian came out with me about a month ago, didn't you?
Yeah.
We flew the Falcon out here at Camelot Castle. It was absolutely beautiful. The sun was gorgeous. The light was fabulous. And to see a falcon flying anywhere is great, but right here at Camelot Castle, if
somebody wants to come and fly falcons with you here, they can do that.
Yeah. Well,
you bring the falcons down, and they can, So that's a lovely thing. So for those of you out there that would like a falcon flying experience with Jonathan, contact him on the website or through our reception here, and we can sort that out for you. And it's very special if you've never done it. It's a very, very spiritual. It just embraces all of nature, and it's just lovely to see Jonathan work with the falcons.
Yeah.
Well, Jonathan, that is wonderful. Thank you for coming on.
Absolute pleasure.
And what can I say? I'll leave you all dreaming of flying your falcons.
Can I say one last thing?
Yes, you can. Of course you can. Absolutely.
I'd just like to say to every person who's watching and every person who might get to see this video now, don't be scared. Be brave. Look inward. You already know the answers because it's inside you. Believe in love. Be kind. And we're going to get through this. And we'll be in a wonderful world when we get to the other side.
That's a beautiful message, and I completely agree. Thank you, Jonathan.
Bye.